Hello, welcome to my presentation. Today we're going to talk about how to tune up your business for exceptional performance, and we're particularly going to focus on the elements of communication. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but we're going to talk about both internal and external communication and how you can use that to drive value in your business and drive value to your staff and the people who work for you. So before we do that, the first thing I want to tell you about myself. So I've been in the restoration industry for quite a while. My father bought a restoration company in 1988, and I was just graduating high school, so I worked my way through college and years after in most every position in a restoration company. I started out at the end of a wand and cleaning walls, and then progressed through every position in a company. In 1997, my father sold the restoration company, and he did took what I call the restoration road trip. He drove from Oregon to Detroit, Michigan, and back. And before he left, he had this belief that restorers needed someone to talk to who'd been in their shoes. And so, by the time he got back, his premise was true or right, and he had started Business Mentors at the end of the road trip. 6 months later, I hopped on board with him as a 27-year-old consultant, and together we would help restorers create a vision, a plan for their company, and then take the plan off the shelf and help them walk through in their business. And so over that time, we've worked with hundreds of restoration companies, and we've been able to help companies really perfect and improve value in their business. And so let's jump into what I would consider some of the top challenges in your business today, and things that are impacting your everyday decision in your business. And so the first one is a lack of skilled labor. We're just not able to find the people that we need in order to complete the jobs that we have in front of us. And so it is with COVID last year, and then now things opening up, and then we have varying levels of support, those challenges have become really acute. And so we have a problem with lack of skilled labor. And then in addition to that, we have a lack of management resources and management labor. When I talk to restorers, they always tell me that the biggest problem in my business today is I can't find people to get the work done. And so the challenge is, it's not about going and getting more work. It's about trying to figure out how to fulfill that work and the opportunities you have in front of you in your business. And then kind of in conjunction with that is a lack of subcontractors. We're not able to find skilled trades to do the work, whether it's mechanicals or it's framing and finish and painting and drywall. Some are easier than others, but finding good skilled people to get work done is one of the biggest limiting factors in many of the restoration companies that I'm working with today. And then one of the challenges that you have in conjunction with all of these is wage escalation. So when you have a diminished supply of something and you have a bigger demand, which is what's going on right now, then we have this we have the propensity of wages to start climbing, potentially even beyond their value of the position that they're filling. And so that certainly, if we don't feel it right now, it will be a challenge. And so one of the things I'll talk about later, but one of these we would be cautious about is creating permanent solutions to a temporary problem. And so sometimes chasing after people with higher dollar amounts isn't always going to solve our problems. It's actually going to create a bigger problem down the road. It might be part of your solution, but it's not the only part of the solution. So we're going to capture and discuss some of the things that maybe you can do in addition to the compensation amounts, and primarily it's about making a better workplace. So I'm going to build things on this premise of the fact that I believe that if you have good internal communication, that your employees are going to be happy. If you have good external communications, then your clients will be happy. And so just a statement here that I wanted to make is that I find it ironic that the better tools and resources we have for communication, the less we communicate or talk. And I just find that ironic, I suppose. One of the things you want to be careful about is just saying, hey, we have all these tools, so therefore we must be communicating well, when in fact that doesn't always happen. And so I think that's one of the challenges you guys will have to grasp and deal with as you put a plan together for creating exceptional performance and taking a good deliberate approach to communication in your business. So let's talk about this, and I'm going to kind of build this together into the structure of the way this looks. But I think that as you look at communications in your organization, you have to start with a real good foundation, and that foundation is your mission, vision, and goals. And I maybe say mission, vision, values, and goals, but I think they all kind of tie together. And so if you start with that, I think you have something really solid to build off of. And so if you haven't spent the time in going through this process of defining who you are and what you're doing and where you're going, that's the very first step. If you're going to try to have a better communication plan, that's where you start. And I think that when you have that, then you start looking at alignment and operational expectations that fit within those visions, goals, and values that you've established for your company. And then make sure you have good fits within that. I think of some things I've seen before where we had challenges with employees, and the challenge gets when you have a misalignment with those mission, vision, goals, and maybe you have a misalignment because you have employees that create profits for you, but they are misfits in the other areas of the company. So you replace good fits for profits, and that can create problems in your company. I think when you have that foundation to build off of, it creates a structure for everything else to fit within. And I'd say it's not just a poster on the wall. And one of the things I think about when I go into companies and I interview the employees to kind of get a feel for what's going on in the business. And I love it when there is a company plaque with the company mission on it, or their vision or their goals sitting right beside me. And before the employee comes in, I'll pull it off the wall, flip it upside down, and I'll ask the employee if they know what the company mission is, what they know the company vision is or goals, and whatever was on there. And it's remarkable to me how common it is that people don't know. I don't know. Something about service, but I'm not sure. So it's important to define it and have it, but then it's more important to communicate it. And that's some of what we'll talk about today. But build that value, build the goals and the mission, and then communicate. And we'll talk about ways in which you can do that in other sections or parts of this presentation. But make sure that it's not just a poster on the wall. It's the foundation of how you move forward, work, and grow in your business. So once we've taken that step, we talk about communication, and one of Dennis Waitley had said in an audio series that I used to listen to called The Psychology of Winning. He used to say, "Who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying." Who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. And so one of the things I want to talk about, and I think this is an important element, and this is where you get alignment, is this unspoken communications. And in an organization, the unspoken communications drive company culture more than most anything else that you could do or anything you could say. So let's give a couple points here and things that you can look at in your business. But the unspoken communication is what gets rewarded in your business. The things that get rewarded in your business are what becomes important and of value to your employees. So take a look at whether they're formal or informal, recognition, celebration, all of the things that employees are recognized for in one way or another, formally or informally. Those are the things that become important to your employees and what they think is important to you as a company. One of the things that kind of goes into this as well is I always think about permanent employment. And is your business, your organization, a place where people are always going to have a job regardless of their performance? Does it matter what people do? Are there consequences to behavior, actions, and attitudes around the office? A lot of people think, well, I can't get rid of those people because they're so valuable to me. And then eventually they leave or they're fired, and you hear the rumors through the entire company that say, gosh, I can't believe it took them so long to do that. So make sure that you have consistency in your expectations and in accountability in how you operate your business. And then take a look and make sure you don't have different rules for different staff. Make sure that everybody's held to the same high standards in your company. You have a standard of excellence, and that's what's rewarded, that's what's expected, and that's what's communicated. So make sure that, that everyone is treated similarly on the same plane. And then look at consistency. Do you consistently operate in a certain way and do certain things? Another couple points to think about is what causes does your company support? Whether it's business ideas or charities or families or things like that. Whatever it is that you support is what your employees are going to find or think that is important to you and your business. And so take a look at what you support and understand that that's a message to the people working for you. And be deliberate about those things and make sure there's alignment with that last step of this mission, vision, values, goals. And then one of the things that I think is a challenge is, you're the head of your company, whether you're a leader or you're the owner. It's often that you find those people arbitrarily getting involved in operational decisions or situations. And so I think it's important that you have consistency and you recognize and you support the hierarchy of your organization, and that you don't go try to solve all these problems that maybe is somebody else's responsibility. So make sure that you define your roles, expectations, and that everybody underneath you understands their roles and expectations. And then you recognize and you support the process in communicating those and in working in that environment. So don't arbitrarily get involved. Get involved where it's necessary, where it's appropriate. And I think one of the things arbitrarily getting involved, if it's rewarding and recognition, I think you can arbitrarily do quite a bit of that. But if it is on the other side of it's coaching and it's being critical of behaviors and performances, be really cautious of going and stepping in other people's turf, because when you usurp their authority, it has so many consequences beyond that direct management or the direct manager. So be aware of your unspoken communications. So we talked about building that mission, your vision, the big kind of foundation, and we talked about the unspoken items. Let's talk about, we're going to build this into some real structure here. So first we have individual communication strategies, and this is what the direct reports, what should be happening to help people through your organization or communicate expectations or what's going on. So if we're building this structure and process in place, the first thing I'm going to say is let's make sure that it's, before we ever bring somebody on board, do we have a consistent hiring process? That consistent hiring process is going to be it's going to be recognized by the people you're interviewing. And so make sure that you define structure. How do people come in to your organization, and how do you communicate with them, and how do you locate and represent yourself through this entire process? It will be recognized immediately by people seeking jobs. So become exceptionally good at that. Define a system and then follow that system and process. And then once you brought people on board through your interviews, your hiring, your background checks, your skill tests, everything else, now you got them on board on your staff. How do you onboard them? What's the process to telling them how you do what you do? One of the tools, and I would recommend you take a look at a software called Know-How. The website is tryknowhow.com. And Know-How, it's a way of delivering your company operational systems, process, and procedures to the place where people are working. So when they have questions, it identifies the answers, the process, and the expectations. So it's a great tool. It's something you ought to look at as you go through this process of defining your onboarding process, your training process, the how we do things in our business. The next element of this is have consistent and clear performance measurements. We ask this question of we have a confidential questionnaire before we ever start consulting with a company. And one of the questions that we ask is, I know my job description and I know how I'm measured. It's interesting because most people know their job description. They'll say something like, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I really don't know how I'm measured. So those two things need to go hand in hand, and I think that's an important element of what you're going to do in your business. And then the next thing is in this communication is clear daily work expectations and work orders. What's expected? What needs to be done today? What's our expectation for time frame, performance, and what you're going to achieve in a day? How many days it's going to take to do a project? If you explain that clearly to people, then you're going to find more often than not that people are going to achieve at that level. So make sure you have clear communications of both what's expected, how you do things, and then what should be happening on a daily basis on a job site. Clearly explain things. There's nothing more frustrating than showing up and saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and having to call and get clarification or ask the customer the question. That's sort of silly too. So have daily expectations, and then have timely positive and negative feedback. If somebody does something great, then tell them they did something great. If somebody did something incorrectly or poorly, then make sure you take corrective action quickly. I told one of the people I was working with once, I said, you need to make sure that you really recognize when people do what's expected. And they said, gosh, you mean I'm supposed to tell them they did a good job when they're doing what they're supposed to do? I said, well, you give them grief when they don't. So don't you think it would be more effective if you recognize positively the things they did right? Because I guarantee you're going to point out the times when they're critical, when you're critical of what they've done. And then also, I think tied into this, and this is a communication, it's an ongoing communication, there's times and opportunities for it, but it's work practices. How do we do what we do? What's our expectation for the way we show up on a job site, how we talk to the customer, what our vehicles look like, what our equipment looks like, what our job site should look like, what our warehouse should look like. Discuss work practices and operational expectations and make it very, very clear. And then be consistent about enforcing those things. Remember that positive, negative feedback we just discussed. And then let's add to that a couple more individual communication strategies that would be important, that would be relevant to you in your business. The first is, what's the career path in your company? If somebody's hired on as a technician, can they become a manager, a project manager? Could they move into marketing or business development? There's a lot of different places. So if you tell people what their opportunities are, and then you show them a path and a way in which you can work through that process to help them achieve that, then I think that would help add a lot of value to those employees, because they can see they have a future with your business, not just a technician or a manual labor position, but it's a way in which they can help meet and achieve goals, bigger goals outside of what they're currently doing. And then, where needed, what's the performance improvement plan? If they're not achieving and doing what they should, then what is it they need to do in order to move beyond that and to achieve at a higher level? And I think finally, one of the things you have to do is explain to people how they can develop skills, where the opportunities lie for them to get better at what they do, or to learn a trade, or to learn a task or an activity, or become a manager. All of those things I think would be really valuable to your employees. And I think that's an element of something that as you're talking about individual expectations, an important element of making sure that you drive consistency in your company, and that you're helping communicate opportunities to employees. So, kind of getting how this all works. We got company, we got individuals. Now let's talk about performance-based, how we get better at what we do. And so one of the things I think is an effective strategy, and one of the companies I work with, they do routine goal setting and review meetings. And these happen on a very consistent basis. So this is a direct report meeting. At the upper management, it happens on a weekly basis. At levels below then, every one of the technicians has a goal setting and review meeting, but it's a monthly or quarterly. But with the upper management, it happens on a very frequent basis. It talks about, okay, here's what I expect of you. Here's your goals for the next quarter, but here's what I expect in the next week. How are you doing? What kind of things do you need from me as your employer? How can I help you? And what opportunities can I provide for you? And then I think secondarily is you need to make sure you have a formal evaluation process. The employees understand and know how they're measured on a quantifiable, objective basis. And when you've communicated that, then you can create effective opportunities and feedback for your employees. And then, so now I think that once you look at all of those elements, we've talked about big picture goals, strategy, vision, and then we've got it down to a smaller level with the individual. Now let's talk about company, bigger picture communication, things that your companies can do and should be doing. So this is just read a book, Death by Meeting, by Lencioni. And in that, they really talk about how meetings can really sap the performance and value out of the operation for a lot of the employees in a company. And so if that's a problem in your business, you need to make sure that you have rules around your big picture communication. The first one is make sure that you have discipline. Meetings need rules and discipline. What time does the meeting start? What time does it stop? What is the agenda if necessary? And what are we going to be communicating? And how do we keep that meeting on task so we're not going down a rabbit hole with some communication that isn't relevant to what we're trying to accomplish? The other thing is we need to have some consistency around our meetings. Some meetings should happen once a month, and some should happen once a week. Some should be daily. So do you have consistent departmental meetings that communicate expectations to the people working for you? And then I think within that, I just want to make a specific note about safety and safety communication. I think the opportunity with doing clear safety meetings and communication drives a culture of safety that says, I care about you as an employee. So is that an element of what you're doing? And I think I strongly recommend that is, no matter what you do, that's first of all, it's the law, it's required. And then second of all, it just communicates something to the employees and the staff there that their livelihood and health is important to you. And then the meeting rhythm is important. Rhythm just means how frequently and when do they happen, and that they are consistent. They go on the calendar and you schedule around the meetings so people know when they're going to happen. They become predictable. And that will help those meetings become much more effective. If it says it starts at 9 o'clock, maybe do it 9:02 and start it at 9:02. If somebody shows up late, don't go back and tell them what they missed. Talk to them afterwards and tell them you expect them to show up on time for a meeting. And so I think that those are important elements there. I'm going to talk a little bit about some all-staff meetings because I think this is a great opportunity for you and for your business. And in those staff meetings, there's some things that would be important to communicate. The way I look at these is this is what really drives your company culture. It's extremely important and it's a great opportunity. And I feel like when you come out of these meetings, it should be like a pep rally. People are pumping their fists, they're excited, and we're celebrating what's important to the business. And so within these company meetings, there's some elements that I think would be extremely important. It's staffing changes. Did people get promoted? Do we have new employees? Who are these new employees and what do they do? When I talked about making sure if you have a plaque on the wall with your mission, vision, goals, that this is the time in which you get out and you talk about those things. Maybe it's break some element of that down in depth and give examples, or just review, here's what we stand for and this is important. And communicate that from the owner's standpoint. The next thing is people, people want to know how the company's doing. Employees want to be part of something that's bigger than them. And so if you have this vision and you're explaining it, now tell people how you're doing, because if you don't tell them, excuse me, they're going to make it up for themselves. And it's usually not going to be the right message being communicated. So tell them how we're doing, where we're going. If you tell them where we're going and how we're doing, then I think that they can start feeling better about the company they're working for and the opportunities that they have. And then this is a great opportunity to celebrate successes, to communicate messages from our clients, have good customer feedback, have awards and recognition for our top performers, from people who have really stood out. Recognize them positively, proactively in your business for great performance. This will go a long ways in helping them feel valued in your business, but also those are the things that build that company culture. And you can train on and on and on about customer service, but if you simply give examples of exceptional customer service in addition to the training, it's going to be so much more powerful. Okay, so we talked about our corporate overall foundation structure of communication, our individual, our direct reports, our company meeting. Now I want to talk about external communication, and I think this is extremely important, especially when we talk about employee satisfaction with their position, is that I believe that most client satisfaction issues are tied to communication first, and then secondarily, if our clients are happy, our employees are more likely to be happy. So if those things are true, and I'm concerned about my biggest problem in my business is making sure I have good employees and my employees are performing and that I'm able to get new employees. So then if we work on delighting our customers, then all of those things are going to start working together to make it an easier and better place to work. And so dedication to communication creates an exceptional customer experience. And if we look at the customer experience and those expectations, then I think that we can start crafting delighted cheerleader customers at the end of this process. And in that process, I think we need to look at our handoffs, how jobs go from the phone call to our mitigation crew, from our mitigation crew to our project manager to our reconstruction department. All of those things are going to go hand in hand, and in between there is when clients get dropped. So let's talk about some rules to the game in our customer communication here. The first thing is, I think it's as we have more and more ways to communicate to our clients, I think it's important to ask our clients how they want to be communicated with. Would you like us to call you at home? Would you like us to call at the office? Would you like us to call your cell phone? Would you like us to text you? Would you like an email summary of what happened during the day? What is that process, and what are your expectations? If we communicate them in the wrong way, it's going to be tough to make up for that. If we're calling them at the office and they say, you can't call me here. If we're calling them in the evening at home and they're saying, man, you're messing up my dinner time and this is inconvenient for me, you can have a problem there. So establish how and when your clients want to be communicated with, and have an effective feedback loop so your clients know how they can communicate back with you. When they're not happy, who do they call? What do they do? How do they communicate with us and our company and solve problems? And then this is a really simple thing, but do what you said. Do what you said. How often does that happen where people are just blown away because you told them you could do something and you did it? And I think that one of the other things in doing that, in managing that process, is under promise and over deliver. It's going to be a whole lot easier. The opposite of that happens too often. We over promise and we under deliver, and then we wonder why the customer doesn't want to pay us the full bill or doesn't want to sign off on the job, or 1,000 things that can go wrong. So under promise and over deliver. I mentioned know-how before. Know-how is, they sent an article to me to review, and this is something I'm going to recommend that you go. I think it's in Restoration and Remediation, the June issue. They wrote an article, they did some research, and they reviewed 1,000 one-star reviews. 1,000 one-star reviews on Google for restoration companies. And the interesting thing is the problems they didn't talk about. The house wasn't dry. The painting was a mess. They didn't do a good. What they said, the top two things: lack of replies. The company didn't call me back. I sent them information. I requested information. I needed to know what was going on in the job. I left phone calls. They never called me back. First one is not lack of replies to the customer calls, and the second one is no follow through. They didn't follow through on the things they said they were going to do. Those two are pretty simple things to solve through a deliberate communication plan in helping you overcome the one-star reviews. And it's a little longer. It's a longer discussion, that certainly. I encourage you to pick up the magazine and take a look at that, because I think it was a brilliant article, and the research in there was very useful, and it really focuses on good communication. The next thing that I want you to do is focus on the things you can control. I always tell my kids, I say, the challenge and problem is when you try to control the things that you have no ability to control, and that causes massive frustration. Well, I think that's true in any walk in life, whether it's in your job or your position in a company or your family or on the road or whatever it is. Driving down the road in your car. Focus on the items you can control. And when you find the controllable items and you take control of those, you will find you can be much more effective, that you can delight your customers and you can delight your employees, or at least take care of their needs. And so focus on the controllable items. And in that article on the one-star reviews was a lack of follow-up on or return calls. That's pretty simple. You know what? One of the things that people, they assume that they're not going to call the customer back because they don't have the right answer yet, and they don't want to tell the customer they don't know. And so what they do is don't talk to the customer, and then that creates secondary problems. Saying, I don't have an answer for you yet, but I will get you an answer is an effective answer as long as you were deliberate about that and you meant what you said. And then setting proper expectations, under promise, over deliver. If you set the expectations too high and then you can't deliver them, well, shame on you. If you set them appropriately and then you exceed them, then I think that's a good opportunity for you to delight your customer in that communication. So, given those things, I'm going to talk about a couple areas of focus. The first one is identify your company standards. What is it that your customers can expect from you? What is it that we expect from our staff and our employees working for us? If we define the areas of focus, then I think that will create opportunities for us and help us be successful and effective. And as I mentioned in the last slide, was not having an answer in telling the customer I don't have an answer is better than no answer at all. And then I think that the final element in focusing on delighting our customers and creating exceptional value is having consistency in our communication, consistency in how we do things, defining a process and creating systems around those. Systems help us drive to a level of performance. And so I think all of those things will be an important element and something that if you're looking to exceed and create an exceptional customer experience, that you will have success in that if you are deliberate and consistent. So let's talk about, okay, I'm kind of weaving some things together, and so I've layered all this process in. We're going to talk about employee engagement. So we talked about the customers, but I'm going to tie this back to part of our first process here, which is the employee engagement. So I believe this to be true, and you can argue with me if you wish, and send me an email or a text if you think differently, but exceptional communication creates an engaged employee. Okay, so that's the first element. The second one is exceptional communication creates happy customers. Okay, this is going to be really obvious, but I think that if you have happy customers and happy employees, it's going to make your job easier. Gosh, wouldn't that be nice? We have happy customers, happy employees, our job's easier, it's more fun, our company is more valuable, we're making more money, we're collecting more cash, more timely, all of those things. So this isn't an easy process, but it's a deliberate process. If we start defining and identifying these things, we can drive through this employee engagement. At the same time, we're delighting our customers and we're creating a more valuable business, and our job is easier too. So there's a whole lot woven into that, and that kind of ties through all of those other elements we talked about. So if we have identified that this is our expectation, that we're going to dramatically exceed our customers' expectations, and we're going to create engaged employees so we can minimize turnover and we can have a company that people want to come work for. That's all of this stuff is just tied around communication. Isn't that neat? So let's talk about kind of a summary of the things that we wove into this discussion. The first one, we want to create clear expectations for our employees, for our company, for our jobs. The next thing is we want high standards. We want high standards across the board, and we want to consistently deliver high standards. Because you know what? If you've got a couple people that deliver high standards and a couple people or a bunch of people that deliver low standards and people are all treated the same, guess what? It's going to start driving performance down, not up in your company. So make sure that you have high standards, you commit to those standards, you have accountability, and that you have expectations when people work there. And if you do that, then I think you're going to find that people stay and they're happy, and then your clients are happy as well. We talked about designing communication rhythm. How often do we talk? When do we talk? What's our process for communicating job expectations to the employees, to the customers? And then be deliberate and consistent with that. And then I think the next step is respecting organizational communication structure, which means as the manager, don't go be critical of the frontline employees, because it carries a lot of weight when you do that. It usurps the authority of the manager who should be managing and handling those things. Your job would be to be a cheerleader for the people you don't directly manage, to get engaged with them and celebrate the things they do right. And if there's something, as long as it's not detrimental to the company or the safety of the employees and the coworkers, then get the manager involved and say, I need you to go fix something. This is not acceptable. So respect the organizational communication, and then become a passionate cheerleader for the things that you want in your business. When you become a passionate cheerleader, now all of a sudden your job becomes more fun, employees respect you more, they are excited to be working there, and you draw better people to your organization. So all of that stuff, it's all built around communication, and when you become a passionate cheerleader, it's going to make your job more fun, and employees will have more fun working there. So with that, thank you very much for your time today. I have my communication, my contact information up here. Philip with 2 L's at businessmentors.net. And my website, businessmentors.net. My phone number, 541-359-4117. 541-359-4117. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, Crawford, for inviting me to speak here.